Hi guys, this is going to be my first video, and I do want to warn you that it's not going to be something that every one of you are going to watch. It's going to be about my steal story. Come on. This is my little guy. He just always likes to keep Mama company. Back to what I was saying, I'm sorry. This is going to be about the stillbirth of my boys, just so that I can share how I felt and how I've handled everything with all of you all. I learned that I was pregnant with twins pretty early on, and they were pretty sure from the start that they were going to be identical twins. And at first, that was more exciting than anything because, you know, it's so rare, and who wouldn't want that? But it quickly turned into a problem because there are so many risks involved with identical twins. The pregnancy went really good, and they found absolutely no problems at all until there were problems. Eventually, one day, I just woke up and I felt like things weren't right. You know, I felt that feeling that mothers say they get when there's something wrong with their children. And nobody thought I was serious, and nobody took me serious. So eventually I just left, and I went to the hospital to see my doctor by myself. And when I got there, I was about 24 weeks at the time. My doctor said that they were just going to look at the heartbeats and see what was going on from there. So when they looked for the heartbeats, they said everything was fine. They had 2 strong heartbeats. There was nothing to worry about at all. But I was still really worried, so I convinced him to give me an ultrasound, and when he turned on the ultrasound, he realized that those heartbeats that he was getting and telling me were fine was my heartbeat. And when they got everything situated on the ultrasound, they realized that one of my babies had already died, and the other one was already dying. So that there was nothing that they could do for me. When they realized that the other baby was dying, they decided that I just had to go to the hospital and wait for it to happen because he was already so sick. Because of them being identical twins, they shared the same blood vessels, and they shared the same blood because the first baby died, and he died a little earlier than the second baby. The first baby poisoned him, and he was pretty much dying by default because of the detox, or the toxin, I mean. After that, though, I went to the hospital, and they pretty much just gave me a bunch of drugs to keep me calmed down, and they waited. And while I waited, they got everything situated to send me to a better hospital so that they could make sure what happened to my boys, and they wanted to have, you know, like, a certified answer. When I got to the other hospital the next day, they did the ultrasound and confirmed that my second baby had already died. And they said that they couldn't really do much until the babies were born, so I was induced. At 24 weeks, they induced my labor with Cervidil because I was already starting to have contractions. They felt that there was no need for Pitocin. And after they gave me the Cervidil, it took about 10 hours for me to get ready to push. And when they decided that it was ready for time for me to push, they wanted me to be able to push the babies out in their amniotic sacs so that I didn't do more damage to their bodies. They said that since they had already died and they were so young in gestation, they were going to be very fragile, and to rupture the fluid sacs would allow a lot more damage done to their skin and to their little bodies. So to keep them looking healthier and prettier per se, they decided to leave them in their amniotic sac, which meant that I had to push out a whole baby and a whole amniotic sac twice. I didn't end up having to push very long, but during the first baby, the delivery was kind of rough because he was the bigger of the babies. And halfway out, his amniotic sac ruptured, and it ruptured with such force that it hit the TV on top of the ceiling in the corner like all hospital rooms have. And so when that rupture happened, it kind of left some marks on his face. He was missing some of his face. And after that ruptured, he came out no problem. sorry. He hit the power cord. After that ruptured, he came out no problem. When it was time for the second baby, he was smaller, and because he was smaller, he came out completely intact in his amniotic sac. And then they just took them. They took them for a while, and I didn't see anything or hear anything. They didn't want me to get too upset until the delivery was completely over. So after the first baby, I didn't get to see him until the other baby was out, and then the placentas were delivered. When they brought them back to me, they were really small. One of the babies was darker than the other, and they had them wrapped up really tight so that I could only see just their face. And they had little hats on their head. And seeing them like that was probably the hardest thing I'll ever do. We decided that my older son, who was only 2 at the time, didn't need to see this, and a lot of my family decided not to see it either. You know, only certain people decided they wanted to come see the babies, because everybody understood that they were dead, and that because they died in utero, there was going to be a lot more of the obvious signs of it. After they were born, they were able to use the placenta and use all the information they had from the babies and determine that my children had the twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. And that's where they only have the one cord, and them having the one cord meant that they shared literally all the blood going in and out of the placenta, in and out of them together. They would have pretty much had the same blood type, the same DNA and everything. There wouldn't have been anything different. They were so identical. And because they had shared the same blood supply, it wasn't enough as they got bigger. Your body's only made to supply the one baby per cord, per spot, and when they don't have their own spot like that, they were forced to share, and it just wasn't enough. It's like having a splitter in a water hose. You don't get as much water through 2 holes as you do from the one. And because they weren't getting sufficient blood supply, Aiden, the bigger of the babies, had congestive heart failure. And Alex was still healthy, the smaller baby, until Aiden died, and the blood was still going through him and around his brother, which ended up causing him to pass away as well. But we got about 3 days with him, and we decided that we shouldn't hold them the entire time, because the more body heat you have, the more it causes the decomposition of the body that you're holding. So we would hold them a while and let them go back to the morgue so that they wouldn't get too hot. And when we were ready to see them again, they would bring them back and put them under a lamp for a little bit so that they weren't so cold when they gave them to us. And the hospital was really good to us. I mean, they really did everything they could to make the process easier on us, but as you can see, it's still very hard, even 6 months later almost. They took lots of pictures for us of the babies so that we had plenty of keepsakes, and they packed everything that they could that the babies used and needed so that we could keep it. So we come home with a bunch of little blankets and hats and little outfits. I was really worried that they weren't going to have anything to wear because they were so small, and just seeing them not having, anything to wear or anything was heartbreaking to me. But to my relief, the hospital provided little outfits that a bunch of church organizations got together and make. So they were really tiny and made for babies that were born early, like mine. We got to keep those, and We got footprints and handprints and we got certificates. They were stillbirth certificates. They were a lot like birth certificates. And after that, we pretty much just had to decide what we wanted to do about a funeral and a service, because obviously we couldn't just take them home. We had to have them sent to some kind of mortuary to be taken care of. And for our lifestyle and the way we live, being in the military and everything, we decided that it would be better to have them cremated so that we could take them with us when we got relocated. So when I got discharged, we had to leave them at the hospital for the mortuary to come pick up. And they were cremated, and we decided to have a private service through our church for our loved ones and for our friends and family who knew we were expecting. And then it was pretty much over. This happened in March 6th of 2013. And now it's August. So it's been about 6 months almost. Everybody else in our lives have moved on except for us. We don't really know how to move on. We don't know how to get past this. Because every day I wake up and I realize that they're missing from our life. And then, you know, we're gone. I don't feel the same. I don't look at anything the same. I miss them every day. I just try to keep them alive in my memory, but at the same time, keep in remembrance that they're gone, so that I don't leave myself on and make this harder and longer with my grief, you know? I don't really know what else to say, but I'm open to talk to you, and I'm open to discussing other things if you have questions, or if you just want to know more about certain things. I just really wanted to get this out there because I know that there are a lot of people who have stillborn children and almost no one knows about it. No one knows how to handle it. Everybody, especially society as a whole, just kind of ignores it and pretends that it doesn't happen. But I'm here to tell you that it does. And I'm here to tell you that there's not a lot of things you can do after it happens, because everybody decides that they should ignore it and that they shouldn't think about it, because society has grown to realize or assume that infant death is too barbaric for any of us to even think about. And I would have agreed before this, but now I realize that it does happen, and there are people out there that it's going to happen to, and they're not going to know what to do, and they're not going to know how to react, because they're going to feel alone, because society just shuts it off. And I don't think that should happen, so I'm here to share my story with you. I'm here to talk to you, and I'm here to just share them in their memory so that they can live on. If you would like to see pictures, if you would like to know more, just please get back to me. I wish you all the best, and I'm sorry that you were seeing this, because if you are, you probably had some reason to, and it's probably not good. But God bless you, and I'm here, as I said. Goodbye.